I like to use the benchmark of safer and not safe. I don't believe that any event can be deemed safe because we all have the capacity to harm and be harmed. The start for me of any event or any project that I'm working on is how do I want people to feel? And that actually kind of starts with how do I want to feel? And that forms the basis of the values that I start any project with. And once I sort of have those values, for me that's equity, inclusion, representation, and safety, that begins to inform any decision I have to make. So because I have those as sort of a reference point, then it makes, certain decisions easier, certain decisions certainly harder, because sometimes it is the harder decision to make when you are really trying to align to your values. And I believe that, again, if you're creating the spaces you can't find, you're creating spaces for you that you would want to be a part of first and foremost. And usually if you can't find them and if you are looking for that space, there's other people looking for it too. Using those values, it really informs everything from who I work with, what venues I look at, what I look for in performers. Really every stage of the process, really walking through and saying, is this going to create the desired feeling that I want people to have? So once I have sort of those values, that value statement, then I think about how I can best communicate that. So that is, the pre-communications. How do I talk about the event? What are the sort of words that I include that sort of give people cues about what the expectations are of them in the event and what they can expect from us, what I am sort of promising at this event that I will sort of adhere to as best I can. That also includes nonverbal cues. So am I providing free water? Because I believe that water is a human right. It's something that not all Canadians have access to. So that to me is something that's part of my value statement. And, signage is really important. How am I, putting gender neutral bathroom signs up to show that I am sort of adhering to those values of inclusion that I've set out from the beginning. Certainly harm reduction, putting out safer use kits for people. So there's a lot of things that people pick up that sort of make up that vibe in a space that might not be directly communicated, but they're definitely felt. And I really believe in communicating values and expectations and invitations rather than rules, because I actually think that people don't really have a strong idea sometimes of what that rule might be. So if you're saying, consent, like if you don't know what consent looks like, as many of us were not taught that in school and through our lives, then how can I adhere to something I don't understand? So having a list of rules that says, no racism, it doesn't mean that someone who holds racist values is going to walk in and then look at the sign and walk out again, right? They might not know how that actually shows up. So instead I look for ways to create signage and cues that let people know this is what I'm invited to do in the space, and I'm a part of this and I have a responsibility in upholding our collective values. So it's really important that, you really think about who you're working with, because you're not necessarily going to be the face communicating with every single person. So I always make sure that the security I work with, I only work with one security team in Toronto, because I know that they have the same values of me of, being hands-off, approaching with de-escalation and bystander intervention tactics, rather than often security can escalate a situation and know when it is appropriate and often not appropriate to call the police, for instance, because certain situations don't warrant that. So I think it's really important to work with people that understand that, have that conversation up front. And I'm very lucky to work with an incredible team of volunteers that we call Vibe Patrol, run by an amazing activist named Erica Williams. And she trains all of her Vibe Patrol volunteers in empowered bystander intervention as well as de-escalation and harm reduction tactics. So it means that we have these friendly folks that are on the ground, on the dance floor, wearing colorful vests or armbands, and they're just sort of allies on the dance floor. So the idea is that sometimes when you're in crisis or you need help, going to security, going to an authority figure can feel really daunting. And so the idea behind that is having sort of a friendly face that maybe you're not sure what help you need, but there's someone checking in on you. There's someone who's walking around, who's just sort of understanding the vibe and helping to, create a safer environment. I also have, used to work as a Safer Spaces manager at Dandelion Initiative. They have some really great training programs if you want to have your core team be trained in some of these tactics as well. So there's a number of resources that allow you to sort of understand how to prevent, recognize, and respond. Prevention is great and in communicating, as we spoke about, and also things will happen. So do you have a clear idea of what happens and how to respond? And that's where it comes back to this safer rather than safe. Things will happen no matter what. And so in that crisis moment, do you have sort of your go-to? Do every single team member know who they're supposed to speak to if something happens, if they need help? And that's also really important that I'll always have a group huddle before the event starts. Just let people know, introduce themselves to each other, and let them see my face, let them see the head security, all these different people, and really know, who are their support team, because we're all there for the same reason, and we all want to support the folks that are trying to have a great time at our event. Community has become a bit of a buzzword in our society, which has been swapped out for customer or social media user. We all talk about community, but to me, I really go back to the meaning of community, which is sort of people who are brought together by shared values. And I think that your event is a community when people feel that they're connected and have a sense of collaboration and co-creation. So to me, my guests or my attendees at my event are co-creators and collaborators in upholding the values of the space. And so rather than seeing it as a transactional relationship of them paying a ticket price to come see a DJ, it's really about how are we building this space together? Because without a dance floor, there kind of is no event, right? They're as much, the performers, they're as much a part of the event itself. And I've actually found that people want to hold a sense of responsibility and ownership over the places that they attend. And that's how they feel connected, that they feel like they know me, they know, the people around them. And so as a result, there's a lot of times when people intervene because they know the values and they want to educate others. This is a new person or a new friend that's coming in. Hey, I go to this party every month. This is kind of the deal. This is what you can expect. And so I think that, really seeing your event as being a collaborative space and how can you all be a part of that. And in terms of finding your audience, again, I think start with you, start with your friends, start with the people that you already know you share something with. What's the space that you've been wanting to create for them? Do you host house parties that have a certain vibe? That's often kind of how we all start in deciding that we want to be, throw events for larger groups. But really, I think it's so valuable if you start small and grow slowly. I think the desire to sort of be popular and have all these people and of course cover, costs that come up can lead you down a path of just promoting to anyone and everyone. And there's a reason you're starting this event. And if it is to create the space you can't find, maybe there are people you don't want to find it. Maybe there's people you're like, happy to leave those people for those other events, right? So again, if you're bringing people together because of your shared values and you already have a group of people that are sharing, then how can you build from there? So how can you ask your friends, hey, I'll, let you on the guest list if you could bring like 2 or 3 other people that you think would also enjoy this type of event and has a similar sort of outlook. And that actually can be very exponential, and that's basically how everybody started. We started with quite a small core group, and it really built to, then selling out 300-person events within the first few months. But it was because we were very intentional about how we were growing. There were certain Facebook pages we would never post the event on. There were certain ways we would never advertise, because that did become a catch-all for people who might not share the same values as us, and therefore would be harder to sort of educate on what that co-ownership of the space was.
I put myself in like a weird position where every event, that we've done, we've always done them in a space that no one else has done an event for. So we are always thinking about everything from the ground level. And in my experiences, I've done, I don't know, hundreds of walkthroughs into venues, even though they're kind of just whatever spaces. And I've seen lots of beautiful, really interesting spaces that could be great for a party. But then, when I start to break things down and look at exits, entrances, existing safety infrastructure, fire suppression systems, like pole switches, and if those things don't exist, then it's just kind of like a no-go for me. When people come to an event, and you're the person hosting, for whatever hours those folks are with you, their safety is in your hands, and I take that super, super seriously. In my younger years, I've definitely done some regrettable things, and thankfully no one was ever hurt. Now I'm safety guy, and unashamedly, I'm that person. So when I walk into a space, I have a checklist of things that I'm going through. Do these things exist? Some of the stuff I mentioned. Are there ample exits? Do the exits lead to flat ground? Are people able to get out of the space safely? And there's been times, we've done events and people have come to me yo, you could have put an extra 200 people in here. No, I know that, but push came to shove and people needed to exit because, something happened. That little bit of, breathing room makes that, the exit of the space, that much smoother. So you have to decide that that's the kind of the person you want to be. Do you want your events to be accessible for people? Do you want people to feel comfortable? And if the answer is yes, those are kind of the bare minimum things you're doing, bringing in accessible washrooms. When I walk into, a traditional venue in the city and I see that, the security guards are all 6'8" white guys, the bar staff are all, white folks, kind of every corner I turn, if the person that I'm relying on for safety doesn't look like me, I don't feel safe there. So for my events, I always make sure the majority of my staff are BIPOC folks. The majority of my staff are women, and just to make sure people, it's the faces that they see who are working at the event, just be okay, that person looks like me, and if something was to happen, I feel comfortable enough to go to them and say, this is happening, and not be made to feel I'm in a position or a bother or leave the event, because I know my safety is in my own hands rather than the person who put the event together. The majority of my staff has gone through training through things like the Danley Initiative, but also they've lived their lives as BIPOC folks and have felt the same things I felt, and so they have that firsthand experience of what it feels like to be in a space that isn't built for you. So I feel that kind of matters. Kind of above everything else, it's that real life experience of feeling like the other or feeling you don't belong. And so everyone that I bring on in my team, not that I've had a conversation, it's have you been traumatized in these ways, but we all know.
So for both indoor and outdoor, I think the first thing is sort of understanding the difference of types of spaces. So, when you're renting from a venue that already has sort of an established infrastructure, understanding what that infrastructure is. Are they providing security? What are their values? Is there an alignment there? I've had situations in the past of renting a venue where they didn't want to give away free water because they make money off water bottles. And that was a point that we had to, work through and understand, how we could meet on that. So just understanding the difference between a sort of space that you're renting that's likely to be pretty, you get the space and that's it, and you have to fill it, and then sort of understanding what infrastructure you would have to put in to that space. So that's can also alter your costs. An empty room can be an expensive space to fill, or an empty outdoor space certainly, and you have sort of more control potentially over that space. So those are two factors that I look at all spaces. For indoor spaces, first off, I always look at accessibility. Again, a major value for me, and wanting to make the space as accessible as possible. So, are there steps to get in? Are there steps to the bathroom? What's the access within the space? I also, look at making sure that we can have gender neutral bathrooms. I also really look for lighting, and especially, are there non-visible congregating spots? So areas like an ATM at the bottom of a set of stairs that's dark. Those are spaces that are often spaces where harassment and sexual assault can happen. So that's something that I always look for, is to sort of to be aware of what are, the visibilities within the space. From a event design perspective, I guess I see myself as a community architect, in that architects think about the lighting, the space, the vibe, like all of the things that create the feeling when you're in a space. So I'm always aware of, who are the people that are in this space? What are the energies in this space? And how does the layout help to build the vibe that I'm looking for? So the ideal dance floor for me is like kind of this bowl effect, where there's people that are like a bit higher on the sides, and then it sort of creates this natural feeling of being held in the space. So, that can be built with having risers, but it's nice to sort of think about, like, how could you imagine the space being set up? Often a wide room is really nice because everyone's kind of up front versus a long room. And then for outdoor space, fairly similar in terms of like accessibility. Outdoor always poses, more potential infrastructure like power, bringing in your own bathrooms, and just, safety concerns. I've thrown events in like a junkyard before, so it's like sweep away the nails and like get rid of the glass and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, again, I think thinking about capacity, how many people you're hoping to be in the space. You can cause, some challenges if people feel that they're too sort of packed in together. That causes some aggression of feeling like you don't have enough space. At the same time, a small dance floor, again, can feel very like intimate and like you're being sort of held in the space. Certainly these days, being very aware of, COVID protocol and all of that as well, is, can people distance? Are you going to have masks on? Those types of things are really important as well. I've been very lucky to learn from a lot of amazing people around me. So I think always ask for help. People are much more willing to help you than you think. It's a lot of work to run events. It's a lot of work to hold space for people. And so, look to people who've done it before and who can, give you some guidance. Ask your friends if they'll volunteer. Ask people around you who again, share values and also have skills that you could use. And that's sort of, again, the best way to build like a community of support that starts very organically. And I think that it's very easy as an organizer to sort of think that you can take it all on. And you can't be in all places at once. And, at some point you want to also enjoy yourself. So find that balance of making sure that you also have space. I think what's been really important to me too is being very present, being a face, being someone that people really recognize. And, I am not the person to sort of stay in the VIP area or stay behind the booth. Like, I've been known to make fruit platters and walk around and give them out to people. I've been known to bring people water. You know, I check on people. That's just a part of me, I think, as being someone who is empathetic and loves to make people feel really welcome and truly thank people for supporting what I'm doing. And so I think that goes a long way, because I think people feel, again, a sense of like, oh, I know me time, and I know that I want to do, I want to help here. I want to be a presence here that contributes to the vibe. So, we always say, bring your best energy. We come to events from all different places, and we need them for all different reasons. And it's okay if you're not having a great day, but if you can at least come with that intention, then usually it'll work out. I'd also say that, representation is really, really important. There's a lot of tokenism that happens in the industry of either just putting someone on a lineup so that it looks like you're more, representative, but really think about where the representation is at all areas of your space. Having women or non-binary security guards, having people on your organizational staff that represent different perspectives, so that you can really try to understand how that plays a part in people coming to an event and seeing someone that looks like them makes them feel like they belong. And ultimately, we all want to feel like we belong, and that will be the thing that people will remember, is that they felt like they belonged and that they're part of this community. And that's sort of at the heart of why we gather and why we dance together.